Welcome to Generation Varied, the podcast where we discuss culture, health, geopolitics, sports, and everything in between. I am your host, Caleb Norris, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Ben Okenge and Jack Widener, with our wonderful producer who is behind the scenes, Sophie St. Furman. Welcome back to another episode, guys. How is everybody doing this week?
Doing good, Caleb.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week, Caleb. I feel like on my social media, I'm starting to see like, 4 years ago, this time, the last 4 years ago, this happened. Listeners, if you are like lost in 2024 already, just because February and January is just going back super quick, like I don't blame you. It's already March, but March, right as now, like it always reminds us, especially me, like what happened 4 years ago. Listeners, we know 4 years ago it was the start of the pandemic of COVID-19. It was just the start of a change that we didn't know when it was going to end. And honestly, 4 years later, here we are. Like it feels like 2020 through 2023 always feels like one long year to me.
Yeah.
I don't know about you both, but that's how I think about it. And I know I can highlight a lot of things that happen that's, could be, just sad and really hard on the world. But I also want to talk about something more fun because it was a funny time, like there are things we just haven't seen. I want to know, where were you both when you heard about COVID and when you heard about the lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, I remember like end of 2019 when they were talking about this coronavirus that's happening in China, and I was like, dang, that sounds terrible. And they're talking about stats and numbers, like it sounded like people were dropping like flies. So I was terrified, and I remember thinking like, man, that's crazy what's going on over there. And then just a few months later, it was like, oh no, this is here too. It's everywhere. And so I remember we were in college still when that happened, and we were about to go on spring break. And I worked in residence life at that time, so I kind of had a little bit of the inside scoop sometimes about what was going on around campus from more of like the administrative side. And I remember like 2 days before spring break actually started, the school sent out an email saying like, your spring break is going to be extended by 1 extra week. And I remember my boss in Res Life had told me like, Ben, don't listen to that. They're extending it 1 week, but you got to know we're not coming back. And
No way.
I was so shocked. And so when they finally did send out the message that we weren't coming back, I was on spring break on the beach, and I was shocked. Like, as an international student, I had no idea what this would mean for me. Like I had to leave the country. I was scared that the Canadian border was going to be closed and that I wouldn't be able to get back home. And I can't stay in America with my visa unless I'm in school. So I was freaking out. Like, what is happening right now? It felt kind of apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And actually, even on campus, the day that we got the email saying that we were getting an extra week, it was pouring rain. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the skies just opened up, and it literally felt like the end of the world for a minute.
I remember it so vividly too. I remember being in the library, and I think Kat was the one. Kat Brown was the one who was like, "Did you just read your email?" And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "We get an extra week of spring break." Yes. And we were like, and so we're like celebrating, like, heck yes, we get an extra week. Because at this time we were just having fun being hood rats in our early 20s. And so we were like, heck yeah, like an extra week of spring break, like heck yeah. I remember, I think I remember that same like apocalyptic, like, oh my gosh, what is going on? I remember like putting a t-shirt like over my face to like walk through the hall.
Oh,
Because a bunch of people were sick on my hall. I don't think it was COVID, but a bunch of people were just like had colds and that kind of stuff. And I was like, listen, they're not about to take me out. All right, it's not about to take me out. But honestly, it sounds crazy, and I know that we're joking around here. We know that a lot of people died from the COVID-19 pandemic, so we don't want to make light of that. But that time period for us personally, it was honestly like a very very vivid like time in my life. I remember, and during I didn't actually like when I went home, and then they said like, hey, we're not coming back. I was actually working at a restaurant doing like the sales and marketing and that kind of stuff, but also waiting tables sometimes. And it was honestly one of I look back on like that 6 months as a as I look back on that 6 months with fond memories for myself personally, for no other reason because it was like the whole world stood still,
Hmm.
and it really forced you to lean into community,
mm,
and it really forced you to lean into relying on people and that kind of stuff. It really changed my perspective on like how I interact with the world and things like healthcare and all of that kind of stuff. And so it was a very dark time in the world, but for me, it definitely put a lot of things into perspective. And yeah, I will say I will never be over the fact that we basically lost like 3 years of our 20s to this thing. Like,
yeah.
we should have
Yeah.
been outside.
Yeah.
We
No.
should have been outside with margaritas, outside enjoying ourselves, dancing to good music. Like, and that, like, almost 3 years was of our 20s was like taken from us, you know?
Yeah. One day we're
Um,
gonna like tell our grandchildren, this happened. This happened when I was in college, and it could happen again. And they're gonna be looking at us like, man, you're crazy. Quit talking about
Yeah,
that. It wasn't
yeah.
that bad. They won't understand.
I
You're
also
so right. So right.
remember, I also remember the day like so vividly. So I was already hearing things happening because my mom's side of the family was in Taiwan. So my Facebook, it was just filled with like,
Mm.
hey, things are happening. So I knew like, oh, this is spreading really rapidly. People are flying in, bringing the virus. They're starting to lock down and closing things. Schools were out. So I was already like, how like that was really fast in terms of how
Hmm.
fast it spread it to Taiwan. And I think I was playing Ultimate Frisbee for intramurals, if not that, flag football. Um, and somebody basically shouted like, "We get an extra week of spring break." Everybody started cheering, like, "Yeah!" Just hugging, shouting. I mean, like a huge weight was lifted off because sometimes a week of break feels like we need another week to recover from that. So this just felt like, hey, we get 1 week to go all out and 1 week to recover and then go back to school. But I knew what it meant. I had everything,
Yeah.
everything. I knew what was going on. My Honda Civic was packed to the final inches, and I drove to Iowa, and it was the start of a crazy 3 years. Yeah, I mean, I remember that day, and I remember everybody around it. I remember that night, I was hanging out in the student government office, and it was just all of us just chatting and talking about what's some people like, what are we gonna do? Are we coming back? And I was like, this is the last time I'll see you guys for a while, and I knew that. But not everybody felt like this was that serious at the time, but obviously
Hmm.
it was. But speaking of March, one of my favorite things about March, not only are we getting close to the spring, but since moving to US for college, March has this magical feeling when it comes to March Madness. And I don't really know how to describe this to those who don't know about March Madness or experienced it living it in America. But March Madness it really is just unlike anything else. Before I kind of talk about why I love March Madness and why you guys love it, I want to know, heading into this year's March Madness is coming upon us, what is the team you are cheering for?
I think for me, first of all, I think I know why March Madness, like it just hit me. I think I know why March Madness feels so energized. And I think it's because it's typically right after like daylight savings. And so it's like we're
Oh.
getting so much sunlight back. And it's like we're getting sunlight back and it's typically warming up. And then you've got like this like thing to be super engaged in with people and that kind of stuff. So I always March is always a fun time for me too. Like I don't follow basketball almost at all outside of March Madness and outside of like the NBA finals. So it's I mean I love this time of year. But I think the thing that I love the most about it is the upsets. I
Yeah.
live, listeners, I live for a good upset, okay? It's my favorite thing about any sports competition. And what I like about basketball in general is that, like, for example, like Purdue was like the number one seat in Big Ten, and Ohio State was like the last seat in the Big Ten like a month ago, and Ohio State beat Purdue. And it's like, in what world in any other sport can that happen? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that the unpredictability of it is like my favorite thing.
Yeah. Ben, before you answer, let me just take a step back here and just kind of explain what March Madness is to those who, might not know. So March Madness is the NCAA Division One, which is the highest level of competition for college sports. So it's a men's and women's basketball tournament that involves 68 schools, 68 teams, and it's basically a single game elimination knockout. So if you lose, you're done. And they it's a bracket, and they eventually determine the champion of the NCAA champion by whoever is the last person standing. It's basically Fortnite, like battle royale, some would say. But yeah, Ben, what about you? Like, who are you cheering for this year?
Okay, as far as who I'm cheering for, since moving to America, have been a UK basketball fan. I love Kentucky, but one thing that I've learned about Kentucky is they're always going to disappoint. No matter how good they are, they're gonna mess up when it's tournament time. And so this year, as much as I do love Kentucky, uh, I'm cheering for Houston. Um, I
Wow.
I really like watching college basketball, especially in the South, and all of the teams in Texas just play a different level of intensity on defense. And I played basketball, so it's something that most spectators actually don't like because there's less scoring and not really as many highlights. But if you really love the basketball, the defense that you see in Texas is crazy, and Houston in particular always has really good defense. They've done well in the
Mm-hmm.
past few years as well. So I'd say Houston. But as far as what I love about March Madness overall is just the intensity that the players bring, and every team, it's so cutthroat. They go out there and leave it all on the line every single game. And that's not something that you see in the regular season. It's so special when the tournament comes around. It's like, we cannot lose tonight, so we're going to play as hard as we possibly can. And you see that just night
Yeah.
after night after night. So the competition is crazy.
Yeah, Ikeda, I'm assuming you're cheering for OSU. Ben, I'm surprised. I'm shocked.
Don't be, man. The Buckeyes have not been good this year. I mean, they did upset Purdue, and that was huge. Um, but I'm not gonna fall for that. Like that is an illusion, I think.
You're so right, man. You're so right. Like, here's what I always tell myself. Number one, I am ride or die OSU all day. Okay, I got into OSU basketball back when like Aaron Kraft was point guard. Like back in like 2013, 2014, something like that. And I really, really enjoyed watching it like all the way back then. But I'm rooting for the Buckeyes out of obligation. We're not a basketball school though, so like we don't really care. And then, but I will say this, and this is gonna make me just sound very shallow and extra gay, and I'm okay with that. I base who I vote for in any given time based off of who has the best uniforms. And I know that that's really stupid and I don't really care. So the teams that I typically go for, I really like Arizona's uniforms just because I think they look really cool. And then I always like North Carolina, like the Tar Heels uniforms, like they just look cool every time. So
True, it's classic. Tell me what you think
yeah.
about Tennessee. How do you feel about their uniforms? Because that always is like an eyesore to me.
Oh gosh, let me look it up here real quick. Uniform. Tennessee uniform. Oh god, that is the ugliest. That is the most. I thought they had like a social. That color
Wow.
is the gaudiest, most ugliest orange ever. It doesn't go with anybody's like skin tone.
No.
It doesn't look good on anybody. That's another reason why I couldn't like be like a fan for them, because it's like I'm not gonna wear those colors. Like, are you kidding me? Like, absolutely not. So no, Tennessee's uniforms are not
That's
the move.
crazy. No,
Yeah.
I love that. Why my favorite thing is the brackets. I don't know what is the potion or the witchcraft behind this bracket challenge, but you have the most random people. Hey, did you create your bracket? Like, you can really, like, during college, I know, like, this is a time where people bond over making their picks. Because what's so amazing, listeners, like, what's so amazing about this bracket is I don't think anybody has had a perfect bracket before. There's all these different competition from ESPN, CBS. I mean, everybody has a bracket challenge where the prize is like a big money prize, and no one ever gets it because the percentage it's insane. Same reason, like you guys, like I love the intensity, and because these college students, there's something on the line for them.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like NBA. They'll get a paycheck after they lose or they lose a final or playoff. Like maybe their legacy, but for college students, like, this is your way of showing who you are and the work you've been putting in, and to be recognized by NBA basketball scouts. The draft is around the corner. Like this, there's so many stories where athletes got into NBA because of how they perform in intensity in like high pressure games. There's so many Cinderella stories, and listeners, what that really means is just a hero we didn't like, unlikely hero that comes out of the tournament that really just becomes where legends are created, essentially. No, that's great. So that's why I love March Madness, and I'm excited for this year. So for the men's, it starts on the men's March Madness starts on March 19th, and the women's starts on March 20th. This is like a 2 to 3 week event that takes place like every day, and then all the way from Thursday, Fridays. So it's just full of basketball. But I want to ask you two like a what if question. Like, would you rather have this or this? Would you rather have more upsets, like these low ranked teams making it to Final Four, or if you would rather have big name schools make the Final Four? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. But if you only can have one or the other, which one would it be?
I would say, that's tough, actually. In general, I'm going to pick the big basketball schools. I know the Cinderella story and all the upsets are so fun to follow, and inevitably there will be a team that makes a crazy run that no one was expecting. But end of the day, if you're ranked number 16, you're ranked number 16 for a reason. I don't want to watch you. I want to watch the number one, Until it gets down to some of those later rounds,
Mhm.
I want to see the best teams play against the best teams. And a lot of times what happens when you have a crazy upset is the very next game they just get blown out. And
Mhm.
so it doesn't actually become this crazy Cinderella story. It's just like, yeah, we had one big upset.
Wasn't Villanova like I remember Villanova, it was not it might I don't think it was last year, but I think it might have been like 2 or 3 years that they had like a big upset and they went all the way to like the final four, didn't they?
Yeah, well, Villanova won a few years back. I think that was
Hmm.
maybe in
Yeah.
2017 or 2018. But maybe the most historic one would have been UMBC. They upset. They were a 16 seed that won against the 1 seed, and that was in 2018, I believe.
Hmm.
It-
But yeah, no, I mean there are teams like Villanova, but that's the thing. Villanova, even if they have a bad seed, I consider that a big basketball school.
yeah.
Yeah,
Same.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have a very strong football program, so but like their basketball team, like I feel like I watch at least I probably watch more Villanova than any other basketball team, and
Yeah.
I'm just putting it together. Like, wait a second, how do I know so much about this team? I just so happen to be at like an Applebee's or something every single time they're playing. I feel like and
That's
see them
funny.
in passing.
So the reason I asked this question is because last year, I don't even know if you guys know who was in the Final Four, but no, the highest ranked team on the Final Four was seed number 4, and that was UConn. And there's 2 number 5 seeds and 1 number 9 seed. And I feel like at that point, like it was exciting for them, but no one was really watching the game because you just
Mhm.
don't. There wasn't like, oh, it's not a rivalry school, it's not
Yeah.
a big school, and that's when I'm like, Ben, I have to agree with you. I want to see big schools going against big basketball name schools. I want to see the
Yeah.
best of the best. I love historical rivals. Not to say I don't love like small teams making a very far in tournament. It's just based off my experience last year. There wasn't just enough. I don't know, just not enough noise around the game or an excitement. So I want to
Mhm.
see some big teams going to the Final Four this year. With that being said, listener, I'm going to leave you with 2 storylines for the men's side and 2 storylines for the women's side that I'm going to be looking out for. For the men's side, this is a team I'm going to be watching. First of all, Purdue. Purdue Boilers, they are ranked number 1 last year. When they went to the tournament, they lost to a 16th seed, and then they were out of the tournament. Now they're ranked number 1 again this year. So they have more guts this time. Like there's something to prove, and I think they're gonna make it pretty far.
Mhm.
Number 2, UK basketball. Ben, I agree. The teams are subpar in tournaments in the previous year, but I think this year is different. I think the freshmen is going to bring something different to the table. I really think this is UK basketball's year. I don't know about championship. I think they could make it to Final Four. And for women's side, who I'm going to be watching is LSU. Are they going to defend their title? I mean, some of the
Yeah.
biggest women basketball names: Angel Reese, Haley Van Flo J. Like these are big basketball names in the women's basketball space, and I can't wait to see if they're going to defend. And then finally, go ahead, Caleb.
I was gonna say, shout out my girl Angel Reese. We want you on this podcast. I followed you on Instagram. Get your bag, get your money with that NIL deal. We absolutely love you, and we want you on this podcast. I am a huge Angel Reese fan. When she hit Caitlin Clark back with
You
that
can't see me.
when she did that, I was like, you better work. You better work, Angel. Like, work out. Yes. Like, it was, I remember I was watching that game actually, because I was watching it for Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, like that showdown. And when she hit her back with that, you can't see me, I was like, this is what I live for. Like, I
Yeah.
loved it
Caleb,
so much.
Kid, I'm gonna break your heart right now, because I look into that story. She wasn't even doing it to Caitlyn. That's what she was doing to the bench. Caitlyn didn't even recognize it.
Oh,
But the framing of that was amazing because I loved it. And that brings into the second storyline, Caitlin Clark. I'm an Angel Reese fan, but also a Caitlin Clark fan. She just became an all-time scorer for the NCAA, both men's and women's. She's the first and only player in basketball history to have 3,000 points, 1,000 assists in a year. So yeah, 1,000 times is incredible. So my dad's from Iowa. My family's is in Iowa, so we're going to be riding for Hawkeyes. I think they can make it a Final Four. I hope they have a rematch. LSU and Hawkeyes. That would be amazing.
Cool.
But these are the teams I'm following, listeners, and I recommend you having these teams make it to your Final Four.
Yeah, and the other thing about LSU, I hope they make it far because I want to see the outfits that their coach is gonna pull off. And I feel like the deeper into the tournament they make it, the crazier the outfits will get, and I love seeing that.
Kayla, I love
anyway.
that. That's awesome.
I love it. I love it so much, and like it's it was a lot of fun to watch. Like honestly, I think that's what got me into women's sports. I've watched a lot of women's sports over the last year, like from that game actually. There's so many exciting things happening with women's sports in general right now. You know,
totally. And these basketball players are lifting the women's sports on the back right now when it comes to popularity, viewership. Like these stadiums, these arenas are being filled out. So I can't wait to see what women's sports continue to prove, especially in March, that people watch it. You know, and it's fun.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great point. Like, I think these coaches and these people that are giving instruction to these basketball players, like I love the stories of how these coaches like touch people's lives. How when you get the right person, the right coach in your life that you can receive like good coaching from, that can critique you, that can encourage you, like when you do that, like I think that's the difference between a team that has great players that all play well together and a team that goes to a national championship. It really does come down, I feel like, a lot of times to coaching and to that the instruction from people that are more experienced, that see it from a different perspective than you, like encouraging those players. So the LSU's like head coach for their women's basketball team last year, I think she had like a couple of national championships up under her belt at this point, and I remember watching her documentary on ESPN last year and just being so inspired. So
yeah, it's so great seeing the impact that coaching can really have on athletes. And that was really one of the big things that kept me involved in sports for so long, is the relationships that I was able to build with my coaches. And like we mentioned some really big names, but none of these people would be where they're at without that kind of coaching and without the mentorship that a coach can provide to you. And that's actually something that I've been finding more and more with successful people in every realm, not just sports, is that they always have mentors. Whether it's just one mentor throughout their entire lives, or whether it's a mentor for a season of their life and then they have a different one for a different season. I find that just in order for you to be at your maximal effectiveness, it's always best to be under the wing of someone who's been in your shoes, or someone who can really provide some insight and an objective eye into that. I think mentorship is good for inspiration, it's good for feedback, it's good for advice, and that's something that I've benefited from, and I know that you guys have as well. So let me just ask you, like, when I say the word mentor, who's the first person that comes to mind for you?
First person that comes to mind for me, I mean, I've had so many great mentors in my life that it's hard to pinpoint just one. But I think one that has been most impactful was actually like my first boss who got me into sales. Her name is Tanya Bosher. She's the managing partner in Ashland, Kentucky, at that Texas Roadhouse right now. Shout out Ashland. Shout out 107. Shout out Hilliard. But I she mentored me for about 6 years and mentored me from the time I was like 18 to the time I was about 24. And definitely, probably, as of this point in my life, like one of the most impactful. And this is somebody that, I mean, didn't just tell me the things that I wanted to hear. This is somebody that humbled me. The first like nice watch that I ever had in my life, she bought it for me for Christmas, like just as a Christmas gift. I'm still very very close to their family, and I say it all the time, but like I wouldn't be where I'm at in my career. I wouldn't be the person that I am today without this
Mhm.
person. Like genuinely, I would not. I'd be a totally different person. And so I think mentors are one of the most fundamental aspects of being successful, and I think everybody should have one.
What about you,
Wow.
Jack?
When I think of greatest mentor in my life, yeah, I have some people I can bring up, but I think the one that has made a huge impact, well, all of them made a huge impact, but the person that comes to my mind is Dr. Jim Shores. He is a professor at my university I went to under the communication department. And first freshman year when I entered the school, I was on campus with the most popular major, undeclared. And then I just kind of I was introduced to the mentorship idea. What are you laughing about, Caleb? It's
Undeclared
true, bro.
major.
It's true, bro. That is the most popular major that people
I
come
love it.
into. It's true. People
I
don't
don't
know
know.
what they want to do.
I don't know why that was so funny to me. So,
Look,
the most popular major. I was undeclared. Well, it was funny because you didn't skip a beat. You just said I was undeclared. Oh, that is
Anyways,
so funny.
tell
it's
us more
true.
about Jim Shores.
That's so funny. So there's these the school we went to is a liberal arts school, so we had to take all these different gen eds, and one of them was communication, and that's kind of when I start meeting other professors from different departments. And Dr. James Short is one of the people who stood out to me in terms of the way he thinks. It really attracted, like, oh, the way
Mm.
he's solving problems or thinking about a subject. And to me, like, that was like, he has something that I want in my life. And that's just the initial, like, okay, I want to get to know him more. I
Yeah.
wasn't in his class, but that's kind of what stood out to me. And I can talk a little bit more like why he is made a huge impact in my life in a bit. But mentorship, I heard about it, in my junior year, entering my senior year. No, the summer before my senior year, just through a YouTube video of all things in high school, and just understand, like, wow, like mentorship is teleport, like it's teleporting. You know,
Yeah.
they from point to point B, they are the one that help make it quicker because they've been to that. Ben, like what you mentioned. So, but yeah, that would be my answer. Shout out Dr. Jim
I love
Shores.
that. Yeah, shout out to Dr. Jim Shores. I think when I think of mentorship, the first person that comes to mind is someone that I still keep in contact with to this day. A big part of who I am is tree planting, and Caleb and Jack, you guys know a little bit about this. We've talked about it, but for those of you who don't know, I used to have a summer job in northwestern Canada as a tree planter. And a big part of
Crazy.
that job is you just are, yeah, I mean, I could talk about that all day. That would be its own podcast. But a big part of that job is that you're so isolated from the rest of society. You don't really get to see anyone for the whole 3 months that you're out there, except for the camp that you live with, a group of maybe 40 people. Um, but during that time, my crew leader, my direct boss, His name is Russ DeGraff. So if you're listening to this, shout out to Russ. He is someone who just has so much wisdom and really took me under his wing, not just for tree planting. Like he did teach me how to become a great tree planter, and that permeated into so many other areas of my life. But even outside of tree planting, we talked about so many things. And he's currently he's a pastor in like a remote place in Canada. But that like spiritual element was something that was really important to me, especially at that time, because it was kind of like a vulnerable state that I was in. And I just think that being able to process not just things like, hey, how will I become a successful person as I get older, but also just some of the bigger, deeper thoughts and questions and struggles about life. Those were all areas that were always on the table, that I felt super comfortable talking with him about. And yeah, just I could say that just from the conversations that I had with him in my time tree planting, I, I grew more than in any other season of my life.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
some of the things that we've mentioned have been vulnerability, transparency, inspiration, success. But what would you say some of the like top qualities or attributes that your mentors had that left an impact on you?
For me, Dr. Shore's, I when it comes down to three things for me. I think just over 4 years now. Like I still stay in touch with him, but we met like bi-weekly or once every 3 weeks or once a month for all 4 years of my college. And I think at the end of the day, like the qualities was really searching for in those conversations, and was one, the way he relates to people. And I know that's not like the most sexy thing when you think about mentorship. People think about, oh, I want to make more money, I want to be successful. Like to me, like the way he related with people, the way he listened, the questions he was asking, to me, like, oh, that is something I want in my life. Like I want to be able to just have a good relationship with people. And I feel like that's one of the things I pride myself in today. The second thing is, being a lifelong learner. I think
Hmm.
for a while I always feel behind in school, especially coming to the United States, where English was my second language, and feeling insecure in the classroom. The way he taught the classes and the way he um, asks those questions, or like think about topics, he really brought out this like desire. Oh, I'm just truly curious about this topic. I want to learn about the world. And that just brought so much like desire to do well in school. And to
Hmm.
me, like that has applied to a lot of things outside of academics. Like when I'm learning or listening, like I really want to understand something really well. I want to know the research. I want to know the data. Like these are things I would say in high school I don't associate my name with. Research and data, that's crazy. But now, like, I love that stuff. Like, even when I watch NBA, I follow the data. Not just for sports betting reason, but just for many other
Hmm.
reasons. And also just um, he holds himself to high standards,
Yeah.
and he's a well-rounded person, and that's something I want to be. I want to have a good relationship with my wife because he did. I want to be always challenging myself physically, and which he did. I want to teach people, teach well, and I want to do that too. Like there's so many things. It's not just like this one area. He was good at. I only want that. It's like as a whole person, like I want to be a well-rounded person overall,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that was just the qualities I was looking for when it comes to mentorship.
I think for me, my biggest thing when you're looking for a mentor is you want to look for somebody whose life you would want to emulate.
Mm,
So don't pick somebody if you think like I wouldn't want to if you wouldn't want to swap places with them, shouldn't be your mentor
right.
usually. And so I actually have so many thoughts on this, so I'm going to try and narrow it down. I think if you are younger in life and in your career, I think you typically need 1 to 2 like mentors or people that you are taking advice from. They shouldn't be your family members. They should not be close friends. They're too close to the situation. You need people in your life that have been through some stuff. You need people in your life that are well rounded, like you said, Jack. You need people in your life that that are principled. Okay. I always say I'm a person of principle. And so the principles and values that I have in my life guide my decision making and all of that kind of stuff. You need to have mentors who are principled. As you grow in your career, as you get older, I now no longer have just one mentor. I have one main mentor, yes. But I do this thing, and this is going to make me sound crazy. I call it like my life board, where I actually have a group of like 5 to 6 people that all fulfill a different portion of myself. So if you think about it, like I've got a small business, I've got this podcast. I would say just because I've worked full time since I was 18, I'm probably about 4 to 5 years ahead in my career than most people like my age. And so I don't say that like cocky. It's just it's the way it is, right? And so when I'm trying to work on breaking into like that VP level, that VP level in like a tech in like the tech world, trying to focus on buying a house, trying to focus on okay, what is there a school that I'm going to go to? I actually have what I call like my life board, and I have rules for my life board, and that is that I need one person on there that is like my spiritual guidance that I go to that I trust. I'm gonna have one person on there that is like my financial guidance. Shout out my boy Jackson Thomas with Edward Jones. If y'all not with Jackson, y'all need to get with Jackson. I've got somebody on there that's going to give me advice on health. I've got what I call the cynic, and then I've got the optimist on my board, right? And
I
so
love that.
what the cynic is supposed to
Mhm.
do is, and I go to all of these people anytime I'm going to make a decision that has the ability to affect me $10,000 or more. New car, new job, college, any of those things that have lasting impacts, or it's $10,000 is my rule, or anything that could have an impact lasting longer than 5 years in my life. Or I'm always going to go and consult all of them individually to get their feedback. And so I have the skeptic on my board, somebody that I trust that is just going to poke holes in everything. Okay.
Mhm.
I've got my optimist on my board that I can call and say, "Hey, this is what's going on. I don't know how to feel about it," and they're going to encourage me and tell me to go for it. And so when you have these voices, and then I have what I call like the chair of my life board, which is my current mentor. Her name is Nicole Hyatt. She's my Savannah mom. I love her. Savannah mom, love you so much. But this is somebody that embodies and is so well rounded and has been at the VP level in corporate America. Eventually in my career, I want to teach at a university. Right? She's been a professor for the last 25 years. She's semi-retired at, I believe it was like right at 50. That's a goal of mine. My goal is to be semi-retired at 45, where I'm only having to work 20 to 25 hours a week. And so she embodied so many things that I wanted for my own life. This is also somebody who is spiritual, who believes in God, believes in Jesus, but doesn't believe in it to where it goes to a place where it's self harming or harming other people. And so our values really aligned.
Mhm.
We also share a very similar cultural background and that kind of stuff. And so the cheat code to life, the cheat code to getting somewhere else, like you said, Jack, that teleportation is finding a solid mentor that can invest in you and that can pour into you, that you can listen to, that you trust, that can put things into perspective for you, that can encourage you and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, That's really good stuff. I especially love not only the idea of having that board, which by the way is not goofy at all. I
Yeah.
think that's such a great way to think about it. Um, but I also love the framework that you have around that about what is guiding those decisions. When do I want to go to my mentors? What decisions are the things that are important to bring to them? Um, I love that. Having a filter through which you can make big decisions is so crucial. Um, when you guys are mentioning all these characteristics and attributes, one of them that hasn't been said specifically, but is underlying everything that you guys have mentioned, is humility.
Yeah.
I think to have a good mentor, you need someone who's going to be real with you. You need
Hmm.
someone who is, yes, ahead of you, who is where you want to be in life, but that is also down to earth enough to really be able to listen to you, to really be able to tell you about the difficulties that they've had, the ways that they've overcome their own personal struggles. So that's the biggest one that I would put out there. But Jack and Caleb, as people are listening to this and they're starting to think like, I think this would be a really good idea to find a mentor. What are kind of some of the ways that you have sought out these relationships,
Hmm.
and what are the ways that you've actually, I guess I find that people oftentimes can find someone that they think would be a great mentor, um, and then not do anything more about it. What are some of those steps for how to
Hmm.
actually initiate that mentorship relationship?
Um, I know this sounds like a really hard thing, but it's actually pretty simple. Um, the first thing is you gotta change your attitude about approaching it. I think the way you approach that conversation is so crucial. If you're only going like, "Hey, I just want to take and take and take," like that's like why I don't know why would
You're
somebody
so
want to just
right.
Hmm.
you want it's a relationship you're forming,
Yeah.
and
Right.
relationship is it goes both ways. So when you approach someone, you want one have the questions ready, like intentional
Hmm.
questions, and genuine questions about that person. I'm like, hey, like I noticed you did this. I'm so curious. Like, why did you do this? And it breaks down all the way to like, hey, like this is where I'm at, and what I admire about you is this, and I feel like I need someone in my life. Just and that takes humility and vulnerability, and just
Right.
being very transparent with like, hey, I don't have all the answers, and I think you can help me, and I will want this to become a thing where I can come to you regularly and buy coffee, like just be a human being.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, people love helping each other. Like that's
True.
people service is the best thing about life is be able to serve people. And I can't imagine a world where well-rounded people don't want to pour into someone else.
Yeah.
So I think that attitude is everything when it comes to approaching a mentor.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally agreed. I think best advice that I have to give is identify the people that you admire, identify the people who see you and your most authentic state and enjoy you. From there, I think just ask. And
Yep.
Like Jack said, um, most people want a mutually beneficial relationship, right? Even if you don't have anything to give them at the time, I would always say to professors, like, I mean, I met with a ton of professors pretty regularly when I was in college. I met with a ton of them, and I would say, would love to like buy your coffee. They would never accept me buying their coffee. I was a broke college kid, and even though professors don't make that much, they made more than I did. Uh, and I think just that when you take this posture of humility, of basically, I want to pick your brain. I want to learn from you. I admire your career. I admire how you do X, Y, and Z. And you approach it with I want to learn from you. People are usually pretty open to wanting to invest in you. I mean, the way that my Savannah mom and I met was we met because my mom in Ohio, shout out Carla, my mom in Ohio connected us when I moved down to Savannah and was like, hey, will you guys link up and and be somebody that he can rely on when you're down in Savannah? And she was like, well, I'll go to dinner. And it was at that dinner that I was just like, I'm basically fresh out of college and brand new to adulthood, and I don't know how to do anything.
Mhm.
I don't even know how. The first thing that she taught me was that I had a boss who had like just gotten fired, and I said, "How do I say that professionally?" And she said, "We say that he's transitioned out of the organization." And so that was the first thing that she taught me 5 minutes into meeting her, because it's like stuff like that you just don't know. How do you say professionally that my boss got fired, so I'm in charge now? So it was it. I think go to people, be humble, and just ask.
Yeah, I think on top of just asking, and when you have those initial conversations with someone who you see as a potential mentor, don't just leave it at that. Because a lot of times people will think like you could have a nice conversation and you can get some advice from them, and then that's where it ends. But if you do want to see this relationship become more of a mentorship relationship, then I would just straight up say, like, hey, I've really appreciated this, and the other thing that you told me. And I'd like to meet up again so we can continue to talk about that.
Yeah.
And like that is not an awkward thing to do.
Yeah.
Just saying
Yeah.
like, hey, could we meet up again in a month's time and talk some more about this? Let me do some thinking. Another thing, Jack, you mentioned coming with specific questions, and I love that. And I guess one of the main questions that is important for me is, how did you become who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm around a lot of academics,
Mm.
and most of the people who I see as mentors today, I admire the way they think. And so one of my favorite questions that I'll ask them is like, what books have you read lately? Or what are you
Mm-hmm.
reading? Or what's a book you read that helped you deal with this thought that you were having?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you pick
Powerful.
the right mentor, they will have an answer to that.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
this. I love this.
I think another thing that you can always do is, along with seeking out a mentorship for like personal growth, is reading. There's so many great books out there. If you're not a reader, people always say, and this is something that a mentor said to me, you are only different 5 years from now from the places you've been, the people that you've met, and the books that you've read. Those are
Right.
the only things that change you significantly as the years progress. And so yeah, read, be a reader. And speaking of reading and books, we're going to transition here over to talking about a topic that I am so excited about. Dune Part 2 hit theaters this past week. Do we have any Dune fans here? Jack, Ben,
Oh,
I'm assuming that you've both seen
100%.
Dune?
Put Dune in
I
the chat, bro. We out here.
I actually have not seen Dune. And the reason behind that is a little bit it's very characteristic of me. For those people who know me, they'll totally understand what I mean by that. But I just have this personal rule that I will never watch a movie that I genuinely don't want to see. I'll never watch a movie just because it's the big thing that everyone's talking about. And for me, that's been Dune. Like, I've seen the previews, I know Zendaya's in it, and I'm like, yeah, it seems cool, but I'm not interested enough that I'm gonna go watch it just because everybody's telling me it's good.
Mm-hmm. I'm on the opposite then from you, Ben. Like way opposite. And in terms of, I guess I don't watch everything that people tell me to, but I think Dune, because I read the book, and I hate sounding like one of those people. Yeah, I read the book, and therefore I have more right to my opinion means more. Like, this is not the case here. I just read a book and I enjoyed the movie. But Hans Zimmer is the person making the music behind this. Like everything
I'll
Hans
find the
Zimmer has
soundtrack.
touched. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like to me, it's like who is in the room when it comes to the movie. And when I
Yeah.
look at the room for this movie, these are
It's
people who
stacked.
genuinely cared about their craft.
Yeah.
And when you have people in the room like that, something special comes out of it. Yes, we have seen movies that have all the rock stars, and it wasn't that great. But I think the things that matter in this is the director, the person who creates the music, and who's the main like supporting actors, I guess, or actors. I think those are things that people don't really pay attention to, but it's so important. Huge Dune fan. I saw part 2 on this past weekend. So yeah.
So Jack, with you being such a big Dune fan, do us a favor and explain Dune, because one thing
Okay.
about me, I've watched Dune Part 1 like 2 or 3 times. I don't care what anybody says. We watching these movies because they're visually appealing and beautiful, not because they make sense, okay? I have watched that so many times trying to figure it out, and it just hasn't come together yet. So do us all a favor here, Jack. Explain it to us.
Dune Part 1 only covers, I would say, 2/5 of the book. Like, not even halfway. And it's just a whole setup. And Ben, just a little bit more about, so Dune follows these different houses, mainly kind of like Game of Thrones. There's the Starks, there's the Lannisters. For here, the big houses is the House Atreides, and they are portrayed as the good people. And then you have House Arrakis. And essentially, the problem is that these different houses are starting to look to the leader of House Atreides for direction and guidance. And there's an emperor in the midst of all these houses, and he sent House Atreides to this planet called Arrakis, where the Harkonnens are taking place. And the reason they were sent there because the most valuable thing in this world, which is taking place way down the road, is there's this thing called spice that exists on this planet, and spice allows space travel and ability for humans to access more of their mind, basically control. So in this universe, there's not a ton of like AI technology. It's more of like the humans has be able to elevate the way they think and the way they solve problems. So it's basically the problem. This is all in trailers. This is not spoilers. These two houses are set up to weaken each other because of the emperor, and it follows Paul Atreides, which is the son of the Duke of House Atreides. So, and you follow the story of him, basically like self-discovering who he is, and a huge part of the story is the Bene Gesserit, and they are the people who work in the shadows, and they basically created
This is where they lose me. When you start talking about these Jezebels, these Bene Jezebels, what's their name?
They've been basically creating certain birth, just like putting people together to find the one person who can see past and future at the same time. Nobody has access to this. Nobody has done this. So you follow the story of Paul basically becoming that, and it's an incredible story, and that takes place on the planet Dune, which is another name, the original name I believe for the planet. And there's just a lot of things that happens there, and it's an incredible story. I'm just talking about stories, and I'm not even talking about the movie. It's one of the best sci-fi books ever written, and honestly, one of the best sci-fi movies. It's an S tier, supreme tier, and that's like Alien, that's like E.T. I mean, some of the good Star Wars movie. This is up there.
He's in some of the good Star Wars movies. I'm weak.
Oh,
so
a view.
That's so funny. No, so for our listeners, as we come to a close here, if you didn't know, Dune was written by Frank Herbert. So Frank Herbert is considered one of the most influential science fiction authors of all time. So he wrote Dune back in 1965. The film, the adaptation of 2021 came out. It was a visual masterpiece transporting audiences to Atreides, the desert planet, which had the galaxy's, most precious substance. But the film actually grossed over $400 million worldwide during the pandemic, during lockdowns and that kind of stuff. And it also swept awards at the Oscars for Best Cinematography, Original Score, Sound, Film Editing, Production Design, and Best Visual Effects. It won 6 Oscars. So fast forward to 2024, the film has already made roughly $182.5 million globally in its first week. And films like this come around once every decade, I feel like. So you owe it to yourself to tell your kids that you were there in real time and that you got to watch it happen.
Yes.
Jack, Ben, any final thoughts from you guys as we close out this episode?
I mean, you guys have me feeling like an idiot for not having watched Dune. So
Ben,
I guess
Ben, it don't make any sense.
there-
Don't worry.
Ben, there is redemption here because Dune 1 is already out and Dune 2 is still in the theater. And you
right. I still have
if there's
time,
an
so I
IMAX
think
so yeah, you have to watch it.
once I get through this, once I get through this semester, I'll definitely give the first Dune movie a go.
Man.
And then if I like that, I'll catch the second one in IMAX. I haven't watched a movie in IMAX in a long time, and I've been looking for an excuse to do that. So this might be it.
You have to highly recommend it. It's a great story. I feel like this is some of the best performance by some of the actresses and actors, just because in the book there's so much dialogue that happens inside the character's head, but when it comes on screen, they wear on their face their emotion, and they do it so well, and it's just incredible. So yeah, go catch. Don't need to buy that popcorn bucket, but go catch that movie.
Oh, I'm buying the popcorn bucket. I'm gonna tell you that right now, okay? But y'all, as we wrap things up here, remember that we are going to be on Everyday Kentucky this Friday at 9 a.m. It is WKYT channel 27 in Lexington. We're gonna post a link to it. We're gonna post some reels on our Instagram page. But would love to have you guys tune in and share. Remember, share Generation Varied with everybody. Give us 5 stars in the App Store. Go follow us on social media. Go follow us on TikTok. Share the podcast with somebody new this week. But thank you guys so much for listening. Ben, Jack, any final thoughts?
No, just super appreciative of all the listeners. So yeah, please rate us and also tell us the type of topics that you would like to hear about, because we want to hear from you as well.
Yeah, submit a topic, generationvaried@gmail. Shoot us over a topic that you want us to discuss.
Final thoughts? Go get yourself a ticket and go watch the movie. That's all I gotta say.
All right, y'all. Well, we will see you guys next week, and thanks again for listening.